Algebra 2 students, and welcome to our second lesson where we are going to be reviewing quadratic equations. Our warm-up question says, which one doesn't belong, and explain your reasoning. So let's take a look at each of these here and see which one does not belong and explain. All right, so there's many different answers here. For A, you could notice that A is the only one that has a fraction. For B, you might notice that this was an identity, which means if I were to distribute there, they would be the same. If you were to solve out this problem, so 5x minus 3x is 2x. We'll combine the like terms first, and that's 2x. If I get the x's together and subtract 2x on each side, that's actually 0. So I'm left with 8 is equal to 12, which it's not. So this one's no solution. Let me fix that. All right. So then for part D, this is the one that we're going to be focusing on today because this one's a quadratic. So something that gives that away is we're going to distribute or FOIL. So I'm going to take the x and multiply it to x and the negative 2. So x times x is x squared, and x times negative 2 is negative 2x. And then I'll take the 4 and multiply it to both. So that becomes 4x, and then 4 times negative 2 is minus 8. And what gives it away that it's a quadratic is that squared right there. That definitely tells me it's not linear, right? So you could have said any of those answers, but this one is the one that we're focusing on today. So moving on to the next question, it says here the word product in math means the answer to a multiplication problem. So it says find the product below. So it wants us to find the answer. So 3 times 0 is 0. Negative 7 times 0 is 0. 0 times 3/4 is 0. And 0 times negative 243 is 0. So looking at part E here, what do you notice about your answers in part A through D? Why do you think this is true? Well, something that we notice is that they are all 0. And why do we think this is true? Well, whenever you multiply by 0, you get 0. Okay, so let's move on to our next page. Okay, O-10. It says, find the area of the large rectangle below. Find the answer in as many ways as you can. All right, so a couple ways to do this. You could look at it as a whole. So this entire length here, if we add 6 and 4 together, that gives us 10. And remember, finding the area is length times width. Okay, so then here, 3 plus 2, that's 5, so I'll take 10 times 5, which is 50. Or you could have broken this up into parts and found the area of each one. So I could take 4 times 3, which is 12, so that's the area of this box. Then we could take 6 times 3, which is the area of this box. Okay, or this next one, 4 and 2 make 8. And the last part here, 6 and 2, so 6 times 2 is 12. Then we could add them all together, which gives us 50. All right, so next part here, it says use the rectangle below to help you simplify. So this one's a little bit different, but also similar to the example we just did. So let's look at it like this. I'm going to take x times x which gives me x squared for this box. Then I'll take 4 times x, which gives me 4x. Then I'll take x times negative 2, which is negative 2x. And then I'll take 4 and negative 2, which gives me negative 8. So that could help with finding all of the pieces, but also if we write out our first part again, so we were looking at this rectangle to help us simplify x plus 4 times x minus 2. So we're going to FOIL that out or just multiply. So I'll take x times x, which is x squared. Then I take x times negative 2, which is minus 2x. Okay. Then I'll take 4 times x, which is 4x. And then 4 times negative 2, which is minus 8. So that's exactly what was up there in our rectangles, right? Well, let's combine some like terms. So we've got our x's. So I'm left with x squared, and negative 2x plus 4x would be 2x, and then minus 8. So something to notice now that we've solved this is that right here, the x plus 4 times x minus 2 right here is an equivalent expression to our answer, okay? They are equivalent expressions. All right, so next page says using the results of problem O-11, we know that x plus 4 times x minus 2 is equal to 0, and x squared plus 2x minus x equals 0 should have the same solutions. Both are examples of quadratic equations. The expression x plus 4 times x minus 2 equals 0 is in factored form. The equation x squared plus 2x minus 8 equals 0 is in standard form. All right, so I'm going to highlight that factored form and standard form. We will be reviewing how to solve equations like these in this course. So looking back at problem O-9, what must either x plus 4 or x minus 2 be equal to? All right, well, something we know even from looking up here is that x plus 4 times x minus 2, it says is equal to 0. So for that, we know that the product, the zero product property, what we talked about in problem O-9, is that a number times 0 was 0. So for x plus 4 times x minus 2 to be equal 0, that means that we know either x plus 4 equals 0 or x minus 2 is equal to 0. So for O-13, it says the equation x plus 4 times x minus 2 equals 0 is in factored form. This means it is written as multiplication problem. When we have an equation in factored form, we can use the zero product property to solve it. Use the zero product property to solve. Okay, so it's basically what I just set up here. So we want to solve in factored form x plus 4 times x minus 2 equals 0. So what we do is we're going to split them up. So I'm going to take just this x plus 4 part, and I'm going to set that equal to 0. Then I'm going to take just the x minus 2 part and equal that to 0. Okay, so do you see what I did? I've got the x plus 4, and I brought it over here by itself. And then got the x minus 2, and I brought that over there by itself. And then you just solve. So I'll subtract by 4 on each side, so x is equal to negative 4. Or I'll add by 2. X is equal to 2. And that's it. So that's how you solve a problem when we're looking at the zero product property. So you'll see some more like this that you got to try on your own. Then O-14 says you may have seen other ways of solving quadratic equations in nonlinear algebra. The quadratic formula states that if you have an equation in the form, so standard form, ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, then the solutions are x is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. So that plus or minus sign right there, that tells you that you're going to have two answers, one being positive and one being negative. Well, isn't that kind of like what happened here? I had two answers, right? So it says use the quadratic formula to solve x squared plus 2x minus 8 equals 0. Hint, this is the same as 1 times x squared. So there's always that little like imaginary 1, okay? Now, we did do this in nonlinear algebra, but it's been a while, so we'll take time and review. So remember, there is an imaginary 1 here. So we're going to label our a, b, and c. So here's our original form there. So we've got a is in front of the x squared, b is in front of the x, and then c. So a here is equal to 1, b is equal to 2, and c is equal to negative 8. And we have our formula, x is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2 times a. So we're going to take our a, which is 1, and plug it in for a. Then we'll take b, which is 2, and we'll plug it in for all the b's. And then we've got, which color should I use? Maybe I'll use like gray. And then we've got negative 8, so that'll go into the c. All right, so let's start plugging things in, and then we'll just simplify from there. So negative b, so there already is a negative there, so I'm going to leave that and then put the 2, plus or minus the square root of b squared. So I'm going to put this one in parentheses. I usually put b right there in parentheses, and then minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is negative 8, all over 2 times 1. And let me do my highlight really quick, just so you can see that. All right, so I plugged everything in, and now let's start to simplify. So I'm going to leave that negative 2 out front, and then the plus and the minus. So let's look at under the square root first. So 2 squared, that's 4. So I'm going to change that to be 4. And then, don't forget right here, this is a negative 4 times 1 times negative 8. Okay, so if I were to type in my calculator, negative 4 times 1 times negative 8, that gives me 32. So I'm going to put a plus 32, because negative 4 times a negative 8 would give us a positive. And then that's all over 2 times 1, which is just 2. All right, so we're getting close. Now, let's simplify again. We've got negative 2 plus or minus the square root. So let's simplify once more. 4 plus 32 is 36, all over 2. Now, we've got negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 36 is just 6, all divided by 2. So now, what I like to do at the end is split them up. So I've got my plus answer and then my negative answer. So I'll put my positive answer that way and my negative answer this way. So negative 2 plus 6 divided by 2 and negative 2 minus 6 divided by 2. All right, so that would give me 4 over 2, which is 2, and then negative 8 over 2, which would be negative 4. So my two answers are 2 or negative 4. And I guess a more formal way to write it would be like x equals 2, x equals negative 4, but same thing. And notice that that was the same answer we had up here. It was just solved in a different way. All right, so let's go to our last part here, where we will look at solving quadratic equations and the important ideas. So we learned about two things today. We learned about the zero product property as well as the quadratic formula. So still review from nonlinear algebra, but I know it's been a while. So the zero product property says if A times B is equal to 0, then A is equal to 0 or B is equal to 0. So an example, like one we just did, would be, how about we say x minus 3 and 2x plus 5 equals 0. So what I'm going to do is split them up. So I'm going to take the x minus 3 and set that to 0, and then the 2x plus 5 and set that to 0. So I'm going to add 3 to each side. So x is equal to 3. So that's one of my answers. Then I'll subtract 5 to start solving for x. So I have 2x is equal to negative 5, divide by 2. So negative 5 over 2, that could be an answer, or that is also as a decimal negative 2.5. Okay, and then the next part here, we talked about the quadratic formula, which if ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0, and remember this is standard form, then x is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So let's do an example of that one. Let's say we had 2x squared minus x minus 15 equals 0. So a here is 2, b is negative 1, and c is negative 15. So we've got our formula, and let's start plugging everything in. So I've got my formula there. So x equals, now I've got a negative already right here. So that negative comes down, but notice this negative 1 is also negative. So I'll put a parenthesis, plus or minus the square root. So b squared, so that's negative 1 squared, plus or minus, so we have this 4ac, or I'm sorry, minus 4. And then a, we said was 2, and c is negative 15, all over 2 times a, which is 2. So if you're a little confused, but that's okay, I'll highlight for you. So that 2, which is a, went here and here, because that's where our a goes. Then I have the b, which is negative 1, and I put it there, but there's also another negative right there. So I had to bring that down because that's part of the formula. And then it also went right here. And then we have c, which is negative 15, which went right there. Let me highlight our b and that other a. All right. Now let's start to simplify. So x is equal, and we've got a negative 1 now. So that's going to become a 1. The square root. So negative 1 squared. Well, that's negative 1 times negative 1. So that becomes a positive 1 minus. Now we've got 4 times 2, negative 4 times 2 times negative 15. So that's 120. So I'll put that there, plus 120, all over 2 times 2, which is 4. So let's keep simplifying. 1 plus or minus the square root. 1 plus 120 is 121 over 4. Now the square root of 121, well, if you're not sure, you can find the square root in your calculator, and that's 11. So we have 1 plus or minus 11 all over 4. So that becomes 12 plus or minus, oops, sorry, we already did, sorry, we have to split it up now. So we're ready. So we've got 1 plus 11 divided by 4, and we've got 1 minus 11 divided by 4. So 1 plus 11 divided by 4 gives us 12 over 4, which is 3. And then we've got negative 10 over 4, which is negative 2.5. All right. So again, what we learned about today was solving quadratic equations. We looked at the zero product property and the quadratic formula. So those are your big ideas for today. So to check your understanding, you're going to go ahead and solve this one. Remember what we talked about splitting it up. And then here, remember your a is 2, b is 5, and c is negative 3. After this, go ahead and go to Schoology and check out your review and practice problems. Thanks.